And now we're going to be moving on to Brian. And one of the things that, home inspectors are just so important. And before I was in real estate, I didn't really get the idea that home inspectors are not only there to inspect a home and find things that are wrong and that need to be repaired, but it truly is a top to bottom education on your own home. No different than Alistair saying his buddy had no idea where the water shutoff is. That's not uncommon. It's not uncommon for people, especially, possibly single people, or if you were not the one in that, a couplehood to truly take care of those mechanical things, and then someone all of a sudden is gone. If I was asked tomorrow to, shut my water off or shut this off or shut that off, I'm like, that's my husband's territory. I don't know those things, So it really is important to even have home inspections. So we're going to talk about this, even with the idea that I'm sure many of you are not, in the market to buy a house, but we're going to be looking at this from the aspect of just taking care of the house that you already own. So Brian, as we are working with people who are buying houses, we always recommend a good home inspector to educate us on that house and find things that are wrong or could potentially go wrong. So talk about the things that make essentially a good home inspector and what people can what people can expect from a typical inspection process and the type of reporting and so forth that somebody that does a good job in your industry should be able to provide.
Perfect. Well, I'm so glad Alistair went first because this is the perfect piggyback on that. A good home inspector is going to find all of these deferred maintenance issues, whether it be window sealant or missing flashing around. We're really going to look for places that water, the number one destroyer of homes, can get into the home, whether it be roof or a plumbing leak. But to kind of zoom out a little bit and get the big picture on what we do, we're just going to go and take an assessment of the home's condition. We're going to look at all the big ticket items, so the roof, the foundation, the heating and cooling equipment, water heater, plumbing, electrical, so that there are no surprises. We'll be able to point out where the water shutoff is, where the gas shutoff is, where the electrical shutoffs are, so you don't get everything mixed up and turn off the wrong one and have a flood. So there will be a lot of FYI information in addition to looking for problems, where the shutoffs are, just the shower was turned on, it had functional flow and drainage, the toilet's all flushed. Here's the age of all the major appliances. Even if they're working properly, you'll want to be able to plan for where they are in their life expectancy. So it's really a big picture view of the condition of the home. In addition to those major mechanical systems, we'll be looking for some other things, the condition of the flooring, doors, windows, things like that. But we really want to look at that building envelope and see if there's a chance of water getting in, and if so, where it is and what we need to do about it. As far as,
I was just going to say, so I often recommend that if you've lived in your home for quite a while, it's great to have a top to bottom home inspection, because it's very easy the longer that we live in our homes that, I don't know about you guys, but often I'll have something that I'm clearing out of the home. It might be a box or whatever, and I'll think about the fact that, okay, that's been sitting there 2 months, and I step over it every day and I don't even see it. Maybe I'll take some time and actually take care of that. And I think it's kind of the same with home maintenance items. When you're seeing something every day, you just don't really think about it. And so whether it's, hiring someone like Brian to do a top to bottom home inspection, or even Home Repair Services will do free home inspections for seniors now. There's usually a waiting list to do that, and there's some hoops that you have to jump through, but there are definitely options for, getting home inspections, and it makes such a difference rather than paying for something that has happened after the fact instead, by being proactive. So what are some of the limitations that might happen during a home inspection, and reasons why a homeowner might experience a failure even after they've had a home inspection, like Alistair was talking about with this property that his girlfriend just bought?
Sure. I want to go back real quick to reporting. One thing you definitely want to look at for a home inspector is communication style, to make sure they're educating you about the home, because kind of the minimum requirement for home inspectors is to point out defects. And that isn't always the most helpful thing because now you just have a list of problems. So you want to make sure that there's a communication style where you have, what is the defect? Why is this an issue? And what can you do about it? Because if you see the insulation was missing from the air conditioner suction line, okay, what does that mean? It means your unit can run at reduced efficiency and result in higher heating and cooling costs, or cooling costs. What can you do about it? Call an HVAC technician to add the insulation. So definitely communication style. You want to make sure that you're getting solutions in addition to just a list of problems.
Mm-hmm. Kind of piggybacking on that, what I often find too in home inspectors, I want someone who's not an alarmist, because it's really important to me to be able to determine, a shortcoming of a house like that is a matter of, hey, you can call an HVAC person, or you might be able to run down to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy that insulation yourself. It's going to cost you $20. It's going to be easy, as opposed to something that is a critical home issue that, I'd say really speaks to what I call home integrity, that's going to be a potentially expensive repair.
Definitely. In fact, we teach a class, continuing education for agents, on what to expect from homes built in certain eras, because homes built in the 1920s are going to have different issues than homes built in the 1970s. So a lot of things, if you find ungrounded outlets in a home built in the 40s, that's pretty par for the course. We're not surprised by that. So then here are the things that you can do to work within those ungrounded outlets. You can plug in two-prong appliances only. You can replace the outlets. You can rewire. But we like to put it in context with the age of the home, the style of the home, and then what things can be done about it. So getting back on track with the limitations of a home inspection and what can be expected afterwards. The home inspection, I tell a lot of people, a home inspection is like going to see your primary care physician for an annual physical. We know a little bit about every single system of the house, but there are going to be times that we recommend a specialist. For a physician that might see neurologist, for us it's electrician. They'd say orthopedic specialist, for us that's a structural engineer. So we're going to be able to see the warning signs for things that could be issues. But especially during a real estate transaction, we're usually hired by a buyer to inspect for a seller. We can't be drilling holes. We can't see through walls. We can't crawl into the drain pipes.
Sellers do frown on that. They don't like the drilling holes thing. So.
Yeah, they don't like it when we cause problems. We try to just find them. So the limitations are, it's just visual and non-invasive. And when we do find signs of an issue, we'll recommend further evaluation by someone who is a specialist in that field that can bring in some more specialized tools and take a little deeper dive and set that expectation with the seller that we might need to take this or that apart so that everyone's on the same page and there aren't any surprises with that further evaluation. Mm-hmm.
And Brian, are there some insurance policies associated with your home inspections or some other home inspections? I know I've had some inspectors in the past who do offer some level of guarantee if something stops working after a certain amount of time, if it was an element that was inspected and deemed, structurally fine during that inspection.
Yep. So this is where you definitely want to take a close look at who you're hiring, because the state of Michigan doesn't have any requirements for home inspectors. Legally, everyone here has the same requirements as me. Some people will take additional requirements, like we do. We get third-party certification, but even that's not required, and insurance isn't required. So a good home inspector that's running a good business will have errors and omissions insurance. That's if they miss something in the report. General liability, they knock over the ladder and it busts a window. And then there's some other products for those surprise findings. There are three versions. One's no plan. I don't like that plan. The other is there will be third-party warranty coverage. You'll want to do your homework on those too. A lot of times they're lead sources for contractors because they know the name of the person buying the house, their phone number, their email address, and what's wrong with the house. And then what we do is we save a percentage of every inspection so that we can help out if needed after the fact. We keep it all in-house to keep everyone's client data safe.
Yeah, that would have been something that I never would have thought of, even being in the real estate industry. So it was really surprising that you might get calls from XYZ contractor. Oh, that's so amazing. I was just thinking that I needed to call a roof person.
That's why the warranties are free.
That's scary. So let's take us through some of the items that you would look for in a house that are specifically related to health and safety and things that might develop where you really can't see it. If you were just walking into a house, what are some things that, or even a house that you've lived in for a while that can develop over time that can truly be a health issue?
So a couple things that we look for. One is exhaust from furnace and water heaters. And probably the most common one is somebody gets a new water heater and they keep the old exhaust. The old water heater was, and these numbers aren't important, but 38,000 BTUs. The new one's 40,000 BTUs. And you had to go from a 3-inch exhaust to a 4-inch exhaust, but they didn't do that. So now all that exhaust can't flow through the pipe, and as a result, it's going into the basement or the closet where it's installed, and that carbon monoxide is hazardous. It can cause, at a minimum, headaches and fatigue, but it can be fatal also. So we look for those types of things. And then electricity, we want to look for improper loose wiring, high heat connections. We use an infrared camera to see, okay, this connection is 180 degrees. That's too hot. There's a problem there that can cause an electrical fire. And then the big one, as Alistair mentioned earlier, is water. Water can come from lots of different places, whether it be roof leaks, leaks in the chimney, windows, plumbing leaks, sewage backups. So we really want to look for water, even if it's just clean, regular drinking water. Over time, it can lead to unsanitary conditions, wood rot, mold growth. People will start to, kind of like the carbon monoxide, feel fatigue, coughing, sneezing, and that can be mold. You can't always smell it. A lot of times there will be a musty smell, but that's why there's value in taking a close look at that type of thing.
Yeah, that's huge. Do you guys use an infrared camera on the walls in general or just in certain situations?
We do. We do a whole house scan with the infrared. There are some pictures that will be in every report, whether there's a problem or not, underneath kitchens and bathrooms where there's plumbing, at the electrical panel. And then there will also be pictures, if there is a problem, you might have a wall that looks just like that, nice clean wall back there. On the infrared camera, there's a big blue spot because there's a leak on the outside. So there are some things I mentioned earlier, we can't see through walls, but we do have some tricks to do some imaging so that we can find things that are visually just not detectable.
Yeah, we had that many years ago in an extra bedroom where all of a sudden I moved the bed back and realized that there was a whole corner of the floor that wasn't there. And we realized that we had had a leak from our roof that went down our wall, and as soon as that was moved back, we ripped out the wall. The wall was all moldy. I was getting ready to move a 2-year-old into that room because I was having another baby, and it took us a while to redo that whole thing, but it looked fine from a distance. So definitely those things happen. So let's talk about that idea of investing in our homes and maintaining our homes to really hold that value, and just the idea of kind of useful life of different structural things and budgeting for future repairs, even when nothing is wrong currently.
All right, well, I will go in order from kind of the shortest to the longest life expectancy things. So the thing that you really want to take care of, shortest life expectancy, is caulk and sealant, whether it be at a bathtub or windows, maybe it's up around the chimney, but caulk and sealant can wear out every 5, 8, 10 years. And if you develop cracks in that sealant, you can get water behind the wall that you don't really know is an issue until it's a big issue. If you have a little leak during a rainstorm and you find it and you seal it, that may not be a problem. If it's doing this for years and you don't know about it until the wall falls in, then you have a much bigger issue. So staying on top of sealant is huge. As far as the major home systems, your shortest life expectancy appliance is going to be the water heater, usually right around 10 years. We see some that are 20 years old. We see some that fail after 8. But water heater will be shorter life expectancy than the next category, which is heating and cooling. You're looking at 20, 25, sometimes 30 years for heating and cooling. And we still do find older systems. These are all statistics. There are exceptions. And then the roof. If caulk, sealant, and that type of thing is maintained, we usually see 20 to 30 years out of a roof.
Just one quick side question. I know this wasn't on here. For roofs, I know that often people can do, how many layers of shingles are acceptable before someone has to do a full tear off for a roof?
So that's going to depend on where the house is. In Grand Rapids, I believe it is 2 layers. Some municipalities say you can only do 1. So that's the legal requirement. There are other places that say 3. As far as the shingle manufacturers, they're all going to have manufacturing installation instructions, and those are all going to be one single layer on top of the decking. So you can legally put on more, but if you have a warranty claim, and I don't know, Alistair could probably speak to the insurance claim, if those manufacturers' installation instructions weren't followed, it can reduce the service life and void the warranty.
Yeah, I hate it with those technicalities because it's definitely easy to have that come into play. So what are some of the most unusual situations that you've come across during a home inspection? And, do you know, if so, did you hear how they were remedied?
So as far as unusual, we see crazy stuff like naked tenants and things like that, but I'm going to stick to homes.
Okay, that wasn't really the
Yeah.
area I was going in.
Sticking with the homes themselves, probably the most surprising things are new construction homes that have defects, because people think this is a newer home, there aren't going to be issues with that. I think probably the two biggest surprises we see are sewer line damage, because when they're building a home, they put in the drainage system, and then they bring in the heavy machinery and landscape the yard. So it could be a brand new, never occupied home with a collapsed sewer line. So that can be a surprise. And then the other one, really popular in the last several years, is stone veneer. You'll pull up and you'll see a nice stone veneer home. Just like the roofs, those have very specific manufacturer's installation instructions. And a lot of contractors or builders will say, I've been building houses for 25 years, I'm just going to put this here. And if you don't have good flashing on top, we can have a newer home. We had one, it was built in 2004. It's getting to be close to 20 years old, but still relatively new. And water was getting behind that stone veneer, and it was out of sight, out of mind. There was a finished wall behind it, and no one knew there was a problem until, we knew there was a problem. No one that lived there knew there was a problem until the stone fell off, and there was a bunch of rotten wood down there. So on the inspection report, we said this is improperly flashed. There's signs of movement. The sealant's deteriorated. There is probably some water damage back there. We recommend further invasive testing. They did not do that, and a month later it fell down. And you mentioned the what happened after the fact. It was $10,000. Lack of maintenance. It wasn't able to be covered. And we had, I believe, 7 comments in the report leading to that being a possibility.
And they were probably coming back and suggesting that maybe your inspection was faulty. Am I right?
They did. We do get callbacks. We keep track of it. Less than 1% of people call us back. We try to help where we can. It's frustrating. It's tough. We're here to educate. We're here to help. There are some things that, if it's in the report 10 times, we just can't help with it. But even then, we try to point people in the right direction, get contractors with good reputations. So we're here to help however we can.
Yep. So we're going to step back just a second to, as many of our homes in the area do age, we are seeing more and more issues with failed septic systems and sewer lines. I know I had never had any since I'd been in real estate, and this year I had 2 that had, major sewer line issues. So can you talk a little bit about how, how you guys can spot things like that, some of the things to look for, even in spotting lead pipes. I know I got a great education when all of this was happening, and some of the programs even that the city of Grand Rapids might have for those that are in the city that can assist in some of the costs of updating those things.
Yeah, so sewer lines, you mentioned earlier, Laura, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That applies to sewer lines so much. They're out of sight, out of mind. When we show up to an inspection, everyone wants to know, how's the roof look? Because people know roof is big ticket. But sewer camera, 5 years ago, no one was looking in pipes for the most part. Now sewer cameras are a very common add-on to the inspection. It's an additional service. And what we do is we take out the clean-out cap and we put a camera in the drain line between the house and the city connection. And in older homes, you have clay and cast iron pipes that are 4 or 5 foot sections because they were heavy. You couldn't put in a 20-foot section. No one could lift it. And you start to get roots in those seams at every 4 and 5 feet. So people will think, roots, the line's broken, it's collapsed, there's a hole. No, it's just regular maintenance. I've heard plumbers say everything from 1 year to every 5 years get that cleaned out. But the sewer camera will help give you an idea of the condition of those lines. And having the roots cleaned out is regular maintenance, a roto-rooter that can prevent a very expensive backup because it's not, sometimes the line does need to be replaced, and that can be expensive, but most of the time you're trying to avoid expensive problems in the house when that water comes in the basement.
How about like lead pipes? Because I know in the situation that I had, they're like, oh yeah, there's this little ball thing that once you spot that, you know that this house has lead pipes, and because of that, it couldn't be fixed. It had to be replaced. And
so with lead pipes, you mentioned the little ball, and it's the way that they connected the pipes because you don't get a continuous pipe all the way from the sink all the way out to the city supply. You have these little bulbous connections that you can see on a lead pipe, and we identify them. I am not as familiar with the programs to replace them. I believe they, and you can help me out if you know, but I thought that they have like a city program where they will help fix it, but then you have to either live there for a certain amount of time or. I'm not as familiar with that. It
depends. I've worked, so McDonald Plumbing has been a really, really great resource, and they do a ton of work with the city and those connections from homes to the actual city connection. And I know that they will, the homeowner pays for it, but they pay at a greatly reduced rate if they, McDonald has like a deal worked out with the city where they will quote it all up front. And the one that we did was a tiny house, very close to Plainfield and Grand Rapids. And to do that work was about $7,000. So it was still not inexpensive. And yet the other one that I was speaking of earlier that had a sewer line collapse where we had no idea that there was an issue was $20,000. And that was not at all covered by anyone. So same thing. It's those things that the more you know how to be proactive, how to get these things tested, the less you will ever be in a situation of, something that is a very expensive repair after the fact. So just kind of moving on to the last question, what are your thoughts on home warranties? I know that a lot of times, a lot of my clients do get home warranties. Much of the time they can be very, very helpful, but I feel like there can be like contractors, it makes a difference in who you choose and what their programs are and reading that fine print.
For home warranties, there are good home warranties, there are bad home warranties. So I really highly recommend looking at reviews. You want to look for things like, they really helped me, they got me out of trouble, that type of thing. Because as I kind of touched on earlier, a lot of home warranties are lead sources for contractors. Though they'll be a low cost and you'll get calls about roof work and phone work, or they'll come in to look at a sink leak, an under sink leak, which would maybe be a couple $100 fix, and then there'll be a laundry list of other things that they're going to recommend that may or may not be an issue. So you really want to do your homework on good reviews. Read online third-party reviews. I like Google reviews. Some people prefer Better Business Bureau or Yelp, but I usually go to, I find it's regional. I have home inspector friends in California, and everything is Yelp. Here it seems like the best review source is usually Google.
Mm-hmm. One thing I've gotten to know also with the home warranties is it's very important that they allow you to use your own contractor, avoiding the sales pitch idea of being a lead source, and also that home warranty has a local representative. I know that the company that I deal with, I have him on speed dial, and so if there's a question of something that they're not covering, this is someone I see at football games, somebody that I'd go to lunch with. It's not a 1-800 number that is, somewhere across the country. And I think that makes a big, big difference to have. Once again, we're just going back to those personal relationships that can really help you when you have an issue. All right, Brian, thank you so much. I know that there's going to be more questions on that, I'm sure.